welcome back to Lesson 2. Joey, are you ready for this?
I am ready, but let's just make sure we let everybody know that this is Toots On Tuesday.
And it is lesson
number two. And I think I'm going to learn how to use the Rotary cutter.
You are. And I think you've used one before, but...
I have, but I think that maybe my technique is not quite what it should be.
So did you feel comfortable with it in your hand and felt comfortable using it?
Well, I do feel comfortable using it. It's a really great tool, but I think that my method of using it is probably maybe not in line with what it should be. Sometimes it goes astray. So.
Okay. And yet we all use them differently. We all use different rotary cutters, but I'll introduce you to the ones that I like to use. But before we start cutting, the first thing we've got to do is teach you how to prepare your fabric properly. Now, you know, as we mentioned before, that sometimes I wash my fabrics, sometimes I don't. If I look at a fabric, mainly the really strong colours like navies and burgundies and things like that, a lot of times they're over-dyed to get that depth of colour in. If I'm a little bit concerned that that might run, I will cut a piece of fabric off the corner, cut a slice off, and I soak that in lukewarm water. And I might do the same with all of these fabrics that you've chosen, but I think these are all pretty safe. But if I was a bit dubious about it and wanted to check what was happening with them, cut a piece off all of them, soak them in lukewarm water, lay out your lightest fabric and put those little samples on top of that fabric and let them dry. Now, I find if they're going to bleed colour, that's when they'll do it. So if one of these started to run dye through the other fabrics, I would definitely wash them all, and I'd do them in...
So you would just use your detergent, cold wash?
I usually soak them in a bucket with some salt or vinegar.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to put them through a cycle in the washing machine, because if you do that, you get all the frayed edges.
So salt and vinegar fabric?
Well, not really. It's not like the salt and vinegar chips that we love to eat. But, yeah, it just helps stop the run. But in saying that, I made a quilt one day, and maybe I'll show it later on in this series. I made a quilt one day where there was a red fabric that I'd used, and I was well aware that it would probably bleed dye, sorry. So I washed it. I soaked it in the salted water, and I made the quilt, I washed the quilt many, many times. Never ran. But one day, I was at, had lent some quilts out to somebody, and obviously they'd got a little bit damp. And I went to collect them. I didn't realise they were damp. They were all folded, and I put them, just folded them up, put them on the back seat of the car, come home, put them in the cupboard, and a couple of months later I went to get those quilts out to use it. And this particular quilt, the red had ran right through the quilt. It had bled everywhere.
Oh, no.
And I thought, what am I going to do? I washed the quilt. It wouldn't come out. Oh. And I know there's colour catchers and all that out there, and I tried them, but it never removed that dye. And then Rob and I were travelling one day, and we had the ABC radio on, and Shannon Lush, and a lot of people know Shannon Lush. She's on the radio all the time, and, she uses natural products to clean the house and all things like that. And she happened to be saying this day, if you have a garment that runs fabric when you wash it, to get rid of that dye, that excess dye, rub it with natural yogurt.
Oh, really?
Who would ever think?
Salt and vinegar and natural yogurt.
So I thought, well, no harm. So I then went and got that quilt. When we got home, I rubbed it all over because I had dye everywhere. So I just smothered the whole quilt with yogurt. It's messy. It's really messy. And I left it for a day and I washed it. And, it removed all of that excess dye. It didn't pull any colour out of the quilt. It just removed that dye. So there's a little tip.
That's a very handy tip.
So thank you, Shannon Lush. I really appreciate your tip. But anyway, that's how we would prepare these fabrics and get them ready if you felt they needed to be washed.
So ready to cut?
No. You can't
cut
just
it down,
cut like
Joey.
that. We've got to prepare the fabric. Okay. So our fabric comes off a bolt. It's always got a crease line in it at the fold. I never trust that crease line because a lot of our fabrics, when they come off the machinery, when it's rolled onto the bolt, they're stretched. So it can be off grain. So the first thing I would suggest you do, and I would normally do this over an ironing board with a big iron, but haven't got the space here for that. I would normally use steam in your iron and we would press out this centre fold. Now, I'm saying press, okay? No, that's ironing. That is ironing.
I think I just lost a gold star.
She earned them in last lesson. She's losing them now.
So would you demonstrate for me?
Yes, certainly. So we're going to press. We're just going to press.
Okay.
Okay. This, remove the crease as much as you can. Keep continuing along there. That's it. Because we don't want to stretch the fabric off grain any more than what it might be. So once you got that whole thing pressed across there, we'll then fold it so that you can understand how we need to get this laying perfectly straight. Because a lot of times when we fold our fabric and we cut straight strips, we get like a dog leg in it on the fold. I find it too hard to have the fabric out as one big width to cut. I like to fold the fabric up as much as I can to get a really fast, clean, easy, accurate cut.
So a shortcut.
A shortcut is much better.
So we're taking shortcuts already.
Not that sort of shortcut. We're going to do the cut that's right for us.
I think I've nearly got this.
It's
a very stubborn crease.
It is, but you just need to get rid of the main part of it. And like if you don't have a steam iron, use a water mister. Just spray a little bit of water on it like you would when you're pressing.
And then press.
Yes. So now what we're going to get you to do is fold your fabric selvage to selvage.
So these are the selvage.
Yes,
here.
we have the selvages on the fabric.
Okay.
Now, before you pick it up, I want you to have one of your fingers between the two layers.
Okay.
Because this is going to allow you to adjust the grain line on the fabric. That's it.
Like this?
Now, Joey, where am I?
I can't help it if you're short.
I'll stand over here. Now, we've got the selvages aligned. Now, the next thing you need to look at is this fold, okay? I just want you to move one layer across towards me, just so we can explain. See how we've got the twist in this fold?
I can very clearly see that. Hopefully the camera can.
Now, just slide your fabrics back that way a bit till you're getting rid of that crease. See how now it's hanging perfectly straight on the fold?
Yes.
If we had left that crease line in there, it'd always be there. So now I want you to put that gently down on the table with the fold towards you.
Fold towards me.
Okay. Now I want you to press that into its new fold. We'll just pull it this way a bit. Just press along, that's good. Don't stretch it, that's excellent. You just keep working across to get all of that done.
So you don't often think about fabrics like this as stretching?
No, but it's because it's... that first fold is very important to get rid of because that has been stretched coming off the machine. So we have to settle that stretch back down. We need to, and like I always say, the preparation work is the most important thing. It's like cooking. Get all your preparation work done properly and you're going to get a nice result. And let me tell you, I'm the worst cook out. So...
Personally, I love to cook.
Well, there you go. You can cook, I can sew.
So in cooking, that's called mise en place, which means everything in place. So you have all your little bowls with all your ingredients and stuff ready to go, especially if you've got a dish that's got to go quickly. So,
well, that's what we do with patchwork.
So we're going to have mise en place here.
We have all our tools out ready, which will explain all the tools we got. Now, what I want you to do next is pick the fold up and take it to the selvage. I'm doing this because I find having our fabric folded in half and starting to cut, I have to use a big long ruler. Mm-hmm. I have to move my hands too many times and I have too much room for error with slipping.
So this is the shortcut.
This is the shortcut.
So this is like a double fold.
A double fold.
So when we go through here, we'll be cutting through four levels.
Exactly. Now, what would you think we'd do next?
I think we'll get the ruler and cut.
No.
Okay.
We need to pick this up and make sure we've got that fold perfect
Oh, we do it again.
Yes.
Get the finger in between.
Get the finger in between. Now, if this was a really, really long piece of fabric, let's say we're working off 3 metres of fabric. She's doing it again. I'll grow taller one day. Let's say we're working off 3 metres of fabric. You would only work with an arm's width because you can't
do that.
Control it. So you'd let the other 2 metres, let's say, drop down to the side, and you'll just organise your first arm width to start with. Now, we can see that I've got a little bit of a twist showing up. Yep, that's good. That's good.
And the fold towards
you. Now you will press that. And really, a lot of people would probably think, oh, this is boring. This will take time. It is one of the most important steps that I've ever taught myself in the preparation part of the quilting.
So in spite of the fact that this takes some time to do, in the long run, it will save a great deal of time?
Absolutely. Because what I would get you to do to prepare every piece of your fabric that you're going to use in your first block, do the same thing as we're doing now with all of them. Get them all prepared like this to start with. So you nearly got it all done. And you can see you're not stretching the fabric at all. You've got it sitting there beautifully.
It never occurred to me that the iron would stretch the fabric.
Yep, it does. So now we'll lay it out on this cutting board. Now, what would you think would be your next step?
Well, I can see by looking at it that this is not straight.
Exactly, and the cut edge is never usually straight. I do never blame the shops for cutting their fabrics crooked. I always found that when it's stretched on the bolt as it comes off the machine, it can be off. And a lot of times when you cut it and open it out, it's crooked. That's because it's been rolled onto the bolt crooked. It's not because the shops cut it wrong. So, yes, we do need to get a straight edge, but I don't want you to get a straight edge yet because there's one more step I take.
Okay. Well, you've got me. I'm not sure what that is.
We use our flower head pins.
Okay.
Okay. I love to use, and I really recommend you get yourself these and to everybody else, make sure your flower head pins are the flattest possible ones you can get. I found doing all the research that the clover ones are best for me because I want to be able to leave these in my fabric. So I'm going to get you to put two pins, probably about 2 or 3 inches in from that cut edge. Now I'm going to show you how to put this pin in because you lifted the fabric up, you could be disturbing it. Can I just put this one in? So what we'll do, I'll just pull it back here a little bit.
So we want to make sure I didn't
disturb
it too much.
Don't lift it off the table, just bring it back up, okay?
So we're going to maintain that perfect
Exactly
fold.
right. So now we need to, before we put any more pins in, we need to now cut this edge to get a straight edge. But we need to now introduce you and talk to you a little bit about the cutter. So there may be some questions you have as we go through that. And I want to talk about the rulers that I would recommend.
Okay, so let's talk about the rulers.
All right, so let's do them first. There is so many different rulers on the market, like, oh my goodness me. I used to have nearly every one that was produced. Now, a lot of things can happen with our rulers. And through a lot of research, I found out a lot of things that have caused me a lot of pain and a lot of my quilting friends a lot of pain, and a lot of the problems that people have with inaccuracy can come from your rulers in different forms of challenges. One thing is that once we start to get a collection of rulers together, my strongest recommendation I can make to you and every single person watching, make sure the rulers are the same measurements. Because I find an inch is not an inch, a quarter inch is not a quarter inch. They're not consistent. Because all different machines and stamping methods and production methods are used to design our patchwork. Everything is in imperial measurements because
that's patchwork.
That's patchwork. So I found inconsistency with measurements is one major problem. So in saying that, if I got you to use this big long ruler to do your first cut, and you let's say we cut a 6-inch strip of fabric, then I'd say to you, cut that strip into 6-inch squares. A lot of people will pick up a shorter ruler to do that cross cut. If you've not checked that those rulers measure exactly the same, you could have a problem.
You won't have your 6-inch square.
You won't have your exact 6-inch square. Now, if you cut those squares, which we'll get into later on in the series of classes, we're going to cut squares and we're going to turn them into triangles. If that's not a perfect square when you start, you're not going to have perfect triangles. Hence, you won't get your proper 1/4-inch seam. So that's one area. My suggestion is, if you've got a collection of rulers, I would really strongly recommend you put them out on a table with a clear surface underneath. You put all of your rulers on top of each other, line them up, and make sure all of your lines, make sure the edges are lined up, as in lining them up exactly. Make sure they're all even, and look straight down into the ruler and make sure the lines all line up with each other.
Well, these ones are absolutely perfect.
Exactly. That's why I use this collection. The other thing is that we have problems with, a lot of our rulers at the inch marks have a very thick line, a really thick line. And you can look at some 1/2-inch and 1/4-inch lines, and they can be a lot thinner than the inch lines. Now, the only reason I could come up with, the only solution I have for why they put thick lines at the inch marks is because they think we're little old ladies that can't see. Yeah, this is one of them. But and that causes a problem, because if we've got this edge of the ruler, let's say this side of the line on the edge of our fabric, and we cut, and then we turn the ruler around and line that edge up again, we're actually on the other side of that thick line.
So you may lose a millimetre off your inch.
Absolutely. You may lose anywhere between 4 to 6 threads in that measurement. Now, 4 to 6 threads in a seam allowance in a 12-inch block, you can lose a whole 1/4 inch in your size. And that's a major problem. And that is a very, very common problem. So I want all my rulers to have thin lines. I want them all to be consistent, the same measurement. The other thing is that was always a challenge to me and a lot of other quilters is rulers slip. So if we had our fabric folded in half like we did before you did the second fold, and I want to cut across a width of fabric, I have to move my hand up the ruler so many times as I'm cutting. And there's that room for error.
I actually saw it slip just that little bit.
That's right.
As you went up there.
So I only use a short ruler. Folding the fabric into 4.
So when would you use that longer ruler?
Maybe if I'm cutting a border and I've got a bigger piece of fabric, but I have to be careful. And we'll get into that down the track. We'll show you how to use that ruler properly. But you can see here now that 12-inch ruler fits that fabric folded into 4 perfect.
Very nicely.
One hand position, one cut. Much quicker. Preparation time takes a little bit longer, but the cut time is very quick. But one other very important thing with our rulers, with the slipping, this can still slip, but the rulers that we've designed, I designed these for myself, and now they're very, very popular. When we designed these here at PQW, we made sure, hear that? That is the engraving into the ruler going very deep. That creates a non-slip surface.
So it gives it a bit of roughness on the fabric.
It does. It will still move a little bit. You've still got to control it, but it won't move as much as the rulers do that are not engraved deep into them. So that's what I would suggest. So my thing with you would be, this would be your starting ruler. Grab yourself a 12 by 6-inch ruler. I don't usually like to introduce a beginner quilter to a ruler that has a lot of rulers are 6.5 inches by 12.5 inches for a lot of reasons, but that can be confusing to a new quilter. So the 6 by 12 is my desired one to start you with.
So you're not finishing on a 1/2 inch.
That's right. And like if there's a 1/2 inch added to this side, it's all confusing. Which side am I going to be cutting from? That can get... I don't know how many times I wasted fabric because I cut on the wrong side of the ruler.
I can see that. I can see how that could be confusing.
Down the track, yes, we'll introduce you to the longer ruler. We'll introduce you to and give you reasons why we build up a collection of rulers. But we'll do that as we work down through the program.
This is a 12.5.
This is 12.5. And there'll be a reason why it's 12.5. And it costs a fair bit of money to get your tools together, but I'm the believer if I'm a builder, I want the right tools. I don't want to have a tape measure that's going to build me a house that's going to go... I don't want rulers that's going to make my blocks go like that. So we're just about ready to cut. So now, rotary cutters. There is so many rotary cutters out there. I always started out using the 45mm blade because there's 4 different sizes in the cutters, if you didn't know. This is an 18mm. There is a 25mm blade that fits in here. There's a 45, and then there's the big jumbo one, which is 60mm. So that's a really big blade. These are my preferred ones.
So I would think that we might choose this one.
Okay.
Because this is a fairly big piece of fabric.
It's not, and that's what people think, that we need a bigger blade to cut through more layers. I'm a believer of, and it was something that happened to me in a lot of situations. I found, let's say, if I was going to tell you, Joey, let's cut 22-inch wide strips. I found doing that when I was cutting, after about 5 or 6 cuts, my fabric started to run off skew, which meant I had to go back and get a new realignment. You know, that because it was for some reason or other stretching as I was cutting. And then one day I watched the rotation of the blade and I found the bigger the blade as I cut, I'll just demonstrate this here, as I cut, the blade was working my fabric forward. It was moving on this side and it was distorting the fabric.
So it might be only a small distortion, but it just would magnify with each cut.
Magnified it so much that after 6 or 7 strips, I would have to get a new realignment and I'd be wasting about, a 1/4 inch of fabric. And, you finish a quilt and you've got all this waste fabric over here and you think that's silly.
And the worst thing would be to get nearly finished with your quilt
and run out.
Have all that waste and you've run out.
Exactly. That's when I started using the 18mm
So we're
blade.
going to select the small one.
Well, we'll start with this one. Down the track we might work with this one, but we just want to compare differences and show you all of that. The blades, you've got to treat your blades properly. Another thing with this, it's harder to run up on the side of the ruler with that blade than what it is with this blade. Because we've got the depth from here to here sitting against the ruler, it's very easy to hit the side of the ruler. It's very easy to hit a pin. Now, doing either of those things, you're instantly putting a dead spot in your blade, which then when you roll it, it doesn't cut the threads. This little cutter, the blade sits right against the edge of the ruler, and it's really hard to run up onto the side. So that's another reason why I love that one.
Okay.
So you're ready to cut?
Oh, I'm ready to cut. Goodness me, we took our time to get here.
So now we've got the folded edge here.
So we know that this is straight.
Yes. So always have all your fold facing to you. Up this edge we've got the fold and the selvage edge.
So now I need to straighten this because I can see how crooked that is.
Okay. Now, you're doing the right thing here. You've just earned yourself a gold star without knowing.
Woohoo!
And do you know why?
I'm going to guess because I'm lining this line up against the straight edge that I'm confident is straight.
That's one good thing. But the thing is, a lot of people use the lines on the board.
I wasn't looking at those.
This is a good example about, let's just move this. This is a great example of what your rulers are like. you remember what I said about the thickness of the line? Can you see here?
Absolutely, look at that.
So if I use the lines on this board as my cutting guide, as my measurements, that line is so much thicker than that line. So if I cut on this side of the line now and then turn my fabric around and cut on the other side, I'm instantly out. So don't use the lines on your board as your measurements.
That's what the ruler is for.
That's exactly right. Ignore the lines here. There's other reasons we'll use those lines later on down the track.
So I would guess that I'm going to line that up.
That's exactly right. But before you start cutting, make sure you've got all your layers here. Make sure there's not one tucked in underneath.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Now you've used a cutter before, right?
All right, are we ready?
Yes. And that's another gold star, without you knowing.
Oh,
you just
lost it.
Lost it. Can I say why you've lost it?
I think I know, because I pointed a loaded gun at you.
Absolutely. Never, ever, ever have the blade of your rotary cutter open while you're talking or when you lay it down. If you were doing a class with me, a physical class out there in the public with a group of other people in the class, you would instantly get a $10 fine that would go in the charity bowl.
Not in the Pauline charity bowl.
No, not in the Pauline charity bowl, in the charity bowl.
All right, let's have another go. What was the gold star for that I just lost?
Because you're starting your rotary cutter, starting to cut before you get to the edge of the fabric. If you started right on the edge of the fabric, she lost another one.
I'm going to get into the negatives soon.
That's fabulous. Now, if you had started cutting right on the edge of the fabric, you'd have one or two threads that didn't cut. So you having your roller blade starting cutting down here, it was rolling by the time and roll off.
Now it went all the way off.
Now, don't throw that away.
Oh, I was about to.
This is a very important piece of fabric. What I want you to do is hold this up with the cut edge facing you. Oh,
there's a little,
there's a little bit under there.
That might mean that we didn't check that properly.
It's okay. It's okay. So this is our cut edge, right? This is our fold. It's running perfectly straight, which means we have folded that fabric perfect. We've pressed it perfect. We've got it straight.
So here we're actually using gravity,
yes,
to show us that this is perfectly straight.
That was one of the most important things you can do before you start cutting.
These are very, very good tips.
Okay, so now we've got that all prepared. Because we're going to be using this fabric a fair bit in our project, I now want you to go through and put 2 pins about every 6 inches apart up this piece of fabric, and I'll help you do this so we get it done quickly. Because by preparing the fabric like this, we can throw it all around the table, use it as many times as we want, and we don't have to realign and waste fabrics and press and do all the things that we normally do.
So we're ready to go with this fabric.
We're ready to go. So now the next thing we need to do is get you, we're just going to get you to cut, one strip so that we know that you're getting everything right with the cutting. And then in our next lesson, we're going to be getting you to cut around templates.
Oh.
And we're going to start cutting out your first block. All right.
So how wide of a strip am I cutting?
I think we need a 3-inch wide strip.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to use a short ruler. And you just figure out how you would position this on the cutting board to cut a 3-inch wide strip. So you'll need to...
this is my true edge. I know that this one is good.
Yes.
So I'm thinking it needs to come this way.
Okay, so you need the pins facing up to you.
So now the fold is not towards me, is that okay?
That's all right, that's all right. Just that first cut, the fold needs to be towards you. So see all that bulk up there? Mm-hmm. Let's just fold it and concertina it. I wouldn't do it like that.
You said concertina, which I would understand.
So concertina it, one fold up, one under. It's allowing us just to open the fabric as we need it. If we fold it over and over and over, we've got to keep unfolding it. Keep it condensed, keep it nice and tight because it makes it much, much easier.
Much less awkward to work with.
Absolutely. The smaller the piece you're working with, the more accurate you will be. That's perfect.
So there's your 3.
Yes, that's perfect. You've got this edge of the ruler. You could use the edge of the ruler on one of these lines, but the edge is fine. You've got it lined up down this edge. It's working perfectly there. It's aligning up perfect along here, so everything's fine.
So now I have my card.
That's it. Perfect. Yay! You earned another gold star.
I got it back.
So now what we do is we put the ruler back on your fabric and move the cut piece away.
And look how nicely that's cut.
It's perfect.
Didn't miss a thread at all.
And I'm sure if we open it out, it's going to be perfectly straight. Because
That's
it was
lovely.
the preparation work that we did that was the most important thing. So now if we're finished with this fabric, we can just throw it over here. And when we come to pick it up again to cut, it's all laid out even. Nothing's moved. And the flower head pins allow us to use the ruler over the top without it moving.
They're nice and flat.
They're nice and flat.
And I really think that you need to invest that little bit extra to get these ones, because I did, for my dressmaking, saw some flower head pins in a haberdashery store and purchased them, and they actually were quite dangerous because this plastic just broke and it stuck, that end of the pin stuck into me when I was trying to pin it into something.
And you know, I've tried many over the years, but I found I've had these since I invested in these, which were expensive, but they've lasted me forever. I bought the big box of them. Perfect.
Yep.
So that's it.
That's it for today.
The other thing is, if anybody wants to know how to use the little mini cutter, how to change the blade, how to oil it, and how to change it into a left-hand cutter, go to our YouTube channel, because we've got a great video there on how to do all of those things with this little cutter.
You can change it into a left-hand cutter.
You can change it into a left-hand cutter.
Isn't that amazing?
And we needed to have one that was left-hand cutter, because when Peggy that works for us, she's left-handed, and a lot of quilters are left-handed. So we need to, you know, it's great that the companies make for everybody. So well done, Joey.
Lovely.
You earned some gold stars, you lost some.
Oh, well, we'll keep score.
Great job. So is there any other questions as far as that goes?
No, I think that we've covered everything quite nicely.
Okay. So before next lesson, your homework would be is to prepare all your other fabrics in the same manner as we have.
So do the pressing, get rid of the crease, do the pressing, and then the folding and the pinning, and making sure everything is even.
Exactly. And then we'll show the pattern that we're going to make. I'll introduce you to that next time. And we'll start using templates to cut out one block. So you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Ready and raring.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you,
Thank
Joey.
you.
And remember, let us know if you've got any questions. Email us at PQW and we'll help you out. So bye till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Joey, just be careful. You kept pushing Pauline down to the corner there.
What, like this?
Yeah,
Oh, Joey.
she's going off screen.
Well, she is short.
I'm going to grow one day.
Grow one what?